The first camera flash hit, like lightning against the chapel stone. Ethan Whitmore didn't flinch. New York's richest men didn't. He stood beneath a black umbrella at the doors of St. Augustine's on Park, a granite cliff face holding back a storm of microphones in hands and strangers who thought his grief was a public asset. The bronze handles of the casket glinted under the rain as pallbearers eased inside. The name on the polished plate, Lila Hart, cut deeper than the weather ever could. Inside, the church smelled of lilies and old wood. A choir boy's voice trembled as he tried for a hymn too big for his throat. Ethan's chief of staff, Sloan Mercer, closed the heavy doors with both palms. The street noise died. The world reduced to wood, stone breath. Ethan walked alone down the aisle. He had buried fathers of industry, rivals, a wife who had tired of being seen, but never known. He had never buried Lila. He had never been allowed to. That was a deal she'd struck with him 14 years ago. His silence for her safety. The last time he'd seen her, Autumn had been dying on the Hudson, and she'd laughed too brightly at a joke she didn't find funny. If you ever need anything, he'd said then, meaning if you ever need me, I'll know how to reach you. She'd answered, meaning please don't make me. Now she lay in a box under a church ceiling that turned rain into music. Car wreck, the paper said. Black ice in June, the paper implied, and everyone nodded because it was easier to agree with nonsense than to fight the men who sold it to them. Sloan slid into pew behind him, rain still diamonding her navy coat. We should keep the service short, she murmured. Cameras have set up across the street. Kincaid's people are out there stirring questions. Of course Adrian Kincaid was. Ethan's oldest enemy never missed a funeral, especially one that wasn't his. It'll be what it needs to be, Ethan said. His voice sounded like a locked cabinet. He could make his voice do that. Hold everything terrible behind the glass. A small movement at the side aisle caught his eye. A teenager standing in the shadows near the votive candles. Hoodie damp. Fists clenched around something hide-wrapped and weathered. She was all angles and broken summer. Two long limbs, scraped knee, a blue elastic around one wrist the color of cheap candy. Brown skin, dark, unruly hair, eyes that didn't know how to look away. The instant she stepped fully into the light, Ethan understood two things at once. He had never seen this girl in his life, and he had known her forever. She walked down the aisle, carrying a leather folio that had been patched and repatched, the stitches crooked and stubborn. The pews rustled. A whisper tumbled like a paper drop from a balcony. Sloane's hand moved toward the inside of her coat, where a radio waited. The girl stopped a yard from Ethan, chin raised like a dare she hoped someone would accept. I'm Ava, she said, voice too steady for 14. My mother was Lila. Ethan felt the floor shift a degree. I'm very sorry for your loss. She left this for you. Ava held out the folio. It was heavy. Something about the weight told him the world had just chosen a new center of gravity. Sloan rose. You can give that to me, sweetheart. Mr. Whitmore will. It's for him. Ava didn't look away from Ethan. And you're supposed to open it now. The pew behind them creaked. Ethan didn't turn, but he knew half the board Whitmore Holdings had come to make sure their chairman didn't embarrass the company by being human. He took the folio. The leather was cold from rain. A simple brass clasp held it shut. He opened it with his thumbnails and found an envelope beneath old paper and the faint smell of smoke. The envelope was thick, the seal pressed in crimson wax. In Lila's hand, the name Ethan, the letters neat and stubbornly unafraid. His thumb broke the seal. Inside, 2 pages. On the first, ink sunk deep into the paper like she'd pressed a pen harder when she was scared. If you are reading this, Ethan, I am already gone. I kept one truth from you to keep you alive. I also kept it to keep her alive. Ava's your daughter. Protect her. They will come for her the second they know. Adrian already suspects. The thing you refused to sign 14 years ago. He signed it without you, and he's been waiting to punish me for not delivering you. If you want to keep her breathing, do not let anyone take her out of your sight until you read the second page. I'm sorry. For all of it. Lila. Something convulsed in Ethan's chest and was strangled before it could rise. The church moved at a slower speed. Sloane's lips formed "Oh God" without sound. He turned the second page. There's a fund at Auguste and Nash in Ava's name. The key is sewn into the binding of the folio. There's a safety deposit box at Heartland Bank in Rhinebeck under El Braden. Inside is the agreement Kincaid made with me and the leverage he thinks he buried. Do not trust anyone on your board who owes Kincaid a favor. You know the list. If I die by anything other than cancer, it was not an accident. Sloane's phone lit in her lap. She didn't look at it. She was watching Ethan, because no screen could compete with man discovering he had a daughter after the only woman he'd ever loved asked him to keep her alive. "I'll take her now," Sloane said, rising to move. The way a body moves when a blade becomes visible. Safe room, side nave. Pike is in the vestibule. Ethan folded the letter, slid it inside his jacket. He met Ava's eyes. "You're with me." Ava's chin lifted a fraction. Defiance, relief, or both. They were 3 paces toward the side door when the first sound cracked the church in half. A gunshot outside, too close to be mistaken for anything else. The stained glass shuddered. Screams tried to come through the heavy oak and failed. Sloane's radio hissed to life. 2 unknowns, black coats, pushing through press. Pike is engaged. The second shot didn't sound like a shot. It sounded like a tire exploding, a car door slamming at the exact wrong time, a window giving up. What it was later was a press camera turning into shrapnel. "Move," Ethan said, not to Sloane, not to anyone, just to the air, to time, to God. "Move." They reached the side door, pushed through the sacristy, into a corridor that smelled like candle wax and bleach. Sloane spoke into her sleeve. "Pike, status." "Front's a mess," Callum Pike grunted. "Head of security, since Whitmore switched from private yachts to private wars. 2 shooters, not amateurs. They want inside." "Why?" Ethan looked at Ava. Ava looked back like a person who had been learning what fear was since she learned how to spell. "Because if a camera sees this," she said, "you can't protect me." Sloane nodded once. "Back vestry. There's a staff exit." The corridor lights cut. For a heartbeat, the church was a country where electricity had never been invented. A generator coughed itself awake and pushed a strip of emergency, lighting down the baseboards. The sudden quiet roared. "Power's out." Sloane snapped. "Not citywide," Pike said in her ear. They tripped the local panel. "Someone's on your side of the door." Ethan stepped in front of Ava. A man unfolded from the darkness near the vestry, like shadow, deciding to become human. No mask. No hurry. A cheap black suit that would never be tailored enough to hide how his shoulders didn't belong to a church. He held no gun, just a gloved hand and the expression of a concierge who had been paid too well to let you have a room you didn't deserve. "Mr. Whitmore," he said, voice warm enough to sell you a better table. "Mr. Kincaid sends her condolences." Sloane moved first, body diagonal, a slim black pistol already up at eye level. The man's hands floated where she could see them, palms open. "He also sends a car," the man added. "For the girl." Ava's breath hitched. Ethan felt the old version of himself, the one who thought money bought distance, died very politely and very permanently. "You can tell Adrian," Ethan said, "the car will be empty." "Sir," the man said, and somehow made the word sound like inevitable, "Mr. Kincaid prefers not to make scenes at churches." Outside, someone was making a scene at the church. "Turn around," Sloane said. "Hands on your head." The man smiled a hospitality smile, and did it. Ethan took 2 steps forward, took his right wrist, twisted gently until pain and compliance were indistinguishable. He nodded to Sloane. She frisked him, fast. No gun, no knife, something in the jacket's inner seam that pinged like a tracker when her wand passed. She ripped the seam. A disc the size of a thumbnail fell into her palm. Tagged the folio, probably, or the girl. The man's smile thinned. "You can't keep her hidden, Mr. Whitmore. People know what you care about. They always have." "Not until today," Ethan said. "Everyone knows today," the man said pleasantly. He tipped his chin toward the nave. "You should go address them, or they'll make up their own ending." Ava's voice surprised even herself. Say my name again and see what happens." The man looked at her properly for the first time. Whatever he saw there made him adjust something invisible behind his eyes. He tried a new angle. "You're safer with us than with a man who turns everything into a headline." Ethan's hand tightened on the man's wrist. "I don't turn people into anything." "That's not what your quarterly reports say," the man said, and grinned like he'd won because he'd hurt something. "Adrian will collect his due. He always does." Sloane shoved him toward a storage closet. Pike appeared at the far end of the corridor, gray suit scuffed, one eyebrow bleeding. Fronts contained. For now. Press is foaming. Kincaid's lawyers are already drafting moral outrage. "Get the car to the alley," Sloane said. "No motorcade. Just the Bentley. Windows up. We go to Whitmore Tower, not the penthouse." Pike glanced at Ava, then at Ethan. "Copy." They moved. The emergency lighting made a runway outfloor. Ava stayed at Ethan's shoulder like she'd been practicing it in dreams. He wanted to say, "I'm sorry for 14 years of absence." He wanted to say, "I didn't know," and have it be a defense instead of a confession. He said neither. He said the only thing that mattered. "I'm with you," he told her. They reached the staff exit. The alley was a wet mirror, reflecting a sliver of gray sky, and a wall of trash cans that had known too many rats and not enough pickups. Pike swept it, then nodded. The Bentley eased forward with a purr that pretended it hadn't been built to outrun trouble. Ava slid into back seat. Sloane went around to the other side. Ethan paused with one hand on the doorframe and looked back at the church that had just become a battlefield. His phone buzzed. "Adrian Kincaid, my deepest sympathies, old friend. I've arranged security for the child. It would be a shame if she became a casualty of your headlines." Ethan looked up at the roofline. Across the street, beyond the police horses and the cameras and the umbrellas that had learned to be shields, a man in a tailored charcoal suit stood very still on a townhouse stoop and watched the alley with binoculars held at his chest like a gift he refused to give. He didn't raise them. He wanted Ethan to know he didn't have to. Ethan got in the car. "Tower," he said. The Bentley slid into traffic. For 3 blocks, the city behaved. Then a sanitation truck lurched out of a side street and jackknifed across lanes like it had been waiting for a cue. The Bentley's driver swore and braked. Something slammed the back bumper. The car fishtailed and bit the curb. Sloane's hand was already braced on the ceiling, her other hand already pulling Ava down between the seats. "Everyone okay?" Pike said from the front. "Define okay," Sloane said, and half smiled without meaning to. The truck's hazard lights blinked. 2 men in sanitation uniforms jumped down, faces too clean. One carried a cone. One carried nothing. Both moved like people who didn't care about choreography, because a gun changes the steps. "Stay down," Ethan said low. He cracked his door, slid out into rain, made himself broad as a wall. "Sir," the driver hissed, "get back." The first uniform approached with the cone. The second reached under his jacket. Pike flowed out of the passenger side and closed the distance as the gun cleared leather. The alley around the church had been a fight. This was a lesson. Pike slammed the man against the truck hard enough to make the door shudder and the weapon clatter to the pavement. Sloane had the other one by his collar before he understood he'd been misled by his own arms. Someone up the block shouted. Phones came up like sunflowers. Ava lifted her head between the seats. She saw Ethan outside in the rain, jacket darkening, shoulders squared in the way men square them when they've decided to lose something on purpose and call it strategy. She reached for the folio on the floor and found the seam Lila had written about. Her fingers slid under the binding. A tiny steel key kissed her skin. "Dad," she said. Ethan didn't look back. He couldn't afford to, but the word went through him like a second heart. "What did you call me?" he asked, not turning. Ava swallowed. "I thought we didn't have time." "We don't," he said, the rain stealing whatever else he might have said, and looked past the truck to the black SUV idling too calmly at the far end of the block. He saw the passenger window slide down. He saw a face he'd paid $1 million not to see again. He saw the muzzle flash. Sloane hit him in the ribs like a train just before the windshield of the Bentley exploded inward. Glass became weather. The city screamed. Somewhere a siren decided to be polite no longer. Ava reflexively curled around the key as if it were made of oxygen. Drive. Pike barked, dragging Ethan back in the car by the jacket collar. The driver slammed the gear. Tires squealed. The Bentley punched a hole through rain and rubber and fear. Ava's breathing came in shallow rations. She stared at the tiny key in her palm, then at the father she just named and the bullets he had just taken for her, without taking them at all. What's in the box? Sloane gasped, pressing gauze to a cut on Ethan's temple that had decided blood was a religion. Ethan met Ava's eyes in the rearview mirror. His own looked unfamiliar. Something raw and unsuited to boardrooms moving in behind the blue. Leverage, he said. The Bentley took a hard right. Somewhere in the city, a man in a charcoal suit lowered binoculars and dialed a number that had never once gone to voicemail. Hello, Adrian. Ethan set into the wind that found its way through the glass that was no longer there, not on a phone, but to the car itself, to the city, to the story that had already stopped being his. The SUV didn't follow. It didn't have to. A text came instead, not to Ethan, but to every finance desk in Manhattan. To every reporter in the van still parked outside St. Augustine's. To every person whose job was to turn oxygen into narrative. Leak. Whitmore's secret child revealed. Trust crisis rocks Whitmore Holdings. Sources. Kincaid. Sloane's phone chimed with dozen versions of the same ending. Get me the tower, Ethan said, blood drying his eyebrow. Get legal. Get me? Ava said quietly and held up the key. You got me, right? Ethan turned then. Really turned. It felt like turning an ocean liner in a river. I've got you, he said. Outside, 1,000 black umbrellas open at once. And on a marble step 3 miles away, a courier in a wet windbreaker set down a package addressed to Ethan Whitmore. Inside, cushioned in gray foam, was a burner phone. When it rang later, long after the Bentley disappeared into Whitmore Tower's private garage, the voice would be Lila's, not live, not possible, but hers, recorded and scheduled to trigger when her attorney logged her death. If you're hearing this, Ethan, Lila would say, it means they didn't make my accident look like an accident. It means Adrian's done waiting. And it means you'll have to choose whether to say what you built or save who you made. But that was later. The elevator to the 72nd floor of Whitmore Tower was silent, except for the faint hum of rain still dripping from Ethan's coat. Ava sat stiffly on the leather bench along the back wall, clutching the patched leather folio against her chest. Her hoodie was soaked, her hair sticking to her forehead in dark strands. She hadn't spoken since the Bentley screamed into the private garage and swallowed them both. Sloane Mercer stood in the corner of the elevator, coat dripping, her jaw clenched. She kept glancing at the girl, as if Ava were both the answer to everything and the beginning of something impossible. Pike, blood drying his temple, had his hand tucked under his jacket, still gripping steel as though the threat hadn't been left 3 floors below. When the doors opened, Whitmore Tower's crisis floor glowed with hard white light. Long tables had been dragged into a war room layout. Screens on the walls flashed headlines. Whitmore heir. Mystery girl at funeral stirs storm. Kincaid claimed secret child. Puts Marlowe Empire in jeopardy. Ethan ignored them. He guided Ava to a chair at the far end of the table. Sit. She did, but her chin stayed high. You haven't even asked if it's true. Ethan took the opposite seat. His hand opened the folio. The wax seal was broken. The letter read. But he laid the pages on the table as if putting a body to rest. His eyes, sharp and cold in the boardroom, softened just slightly. I don't need to ask, he said. Your mother never lied in ink. Ava's breath caught. She looked at the letter as if it were a mirror she hated. Then say it. Out loud. Sloane's eyes flicked toward Ethan. Pike froze in place. The silence thickened. Ethan's hands pressed flat to the table. You're my daughter. The words felt strange in his mouth, like glass, like fire, but they were true. Ava blinked fast and stared down at the table. For the first time, she looked younger than 14. The key. Later. When Pike finally stepped out to clear the perimeter, and Sloane retreated to field the storm of reporters and board members baying for Ethan's resignation, Ava reached into the folio seam and pulled the tiny steel key free. She set it between them on the table. This was sewn inside. Mom said it's for a bank box. Ethan leaned forward, picked it up. It was cold, heavier than its size allowed. Heartland Bank, Rhinebeck. Lila's note said L. Braden. Who's that? A name she used when she needed the world to stop looking. He turned the key between his fingers. If she left something there, it will be the only weapon we have. Ava crossed her arms. You mean the only weapon you have? She wanted me protected, not used. The sting landed. Ethan met her eyes. If Adrian Kincaid wants you, it's not because you're vulnerable. It's because you are the one thing I'll never bargain away. That makes you leverage. And in this world, leverage is either used by you or against you. Ava hated the logic, but she hated being hunted more. She nodded once, sharp. Adrian's broadcast. That night, every major network carried Adrian Kincaid live. He sat in a plush chair, the skyline glowing behind him like a crown. His hair slicked silver, his smile sculpted for cameras. My condolences to Ethan Whitmore, Adrian said smoothly. But it seems we must ask whether his empire is safe in the hands of a man who has hidden a daughter from shareholders, the public, and the law for 14 years. If he cannot be honest about family, how can he be trusted with billions in investor capital? The panelists on screen nodded like marionettes. The stock ticker dipped red. Ethan watched from Whitmore Tower, jaw set. Ava sat beside him, fists clenched. He's making me into a headline, she whispered. He's making you into a weapon, Ethan corrected. He's betting I'll step down rather than let you bleed under cameras. What if he's right? Ethan turned to her fully. His eyes were steel, but softer around the edges than before. Then Adrian had forgotten the most important rule. What's that? You don't threaten what I love and expect me to fold. You expect me to fight. The decision. Sloan returned, dropping a stack of legal papers onto the table. The board want an emergency vote. They think hiding a daughter this long qualifies as material deception. If you don't walk, they'll push you. Ethan picked up the key again. Then they'll learn what it means to push. He stood. Tomorrow we go to Rhinebeck. We open Lila's box. Whatever she left us, it's what Adrian fears most. Ava rose too. Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't. And what if the box kills you instead of saving you? Ethan paused, looking at her like he was memorizing her face. Then you'll know I never stopped fighting for you. And for the first time since the funeral, Ava's eyes filled with something other than fury. The black Bentley hummed north along the Hudson Parkway, headlights cutting tunnels through dawn fog. Ethan Whitmore sat in silence in the back seat, the small steel key clenched in his fist like it was the last bullet in a long war. Beside him, Ava leaned her forehead against the cool glass, watching the river blur into ghostly trees. They hadn't spoken much since leaving the tower. Words had been used up, or maybe they were too fragile to handle. Sloan rode in the passenger seat, scanning her tablet. Pike followed behind in a second car with two more of Whitmore's private security men. When the Bentley finally rolled into Rhinebeck, the quiet town looked almost staged. Clapper houses, coffee shops with chalkboard menus, a bank in red brick with white pillars. Ordinary, forgettable, the exact kind of place Lila would have chosen to hide something meant to outlive her. Ethan and Ava stepped out into the morning chill. Sloan led the way into Heartland Bank. The lobby smelled of lemon polish and old carpet. A receptionist glanced up, froze at the sight of Ethan Whitmore, then stammered out directions to the vault. Downstairs, the deposit boxes lined the walls like graves. Ethan held up the key. L. Braden, Unit 47. The banker unlocked the compartment, withdrew a slim metal drawer, and placed it on the table. Then, discreetly, he left them alone. Ethan slid the key into the small brass lock. It turned with a click that sounded too loud in the concrete room. Ava's fingers dug into the edge of the table as he lifted the lid. Inside lay three things: a flash drive, a thick envelope of photographs, and a folded sheet of paper with Lila's handwriting. For Ethan and Ava, if she ever must know. The photographs. Ethan opened the envelope first. Black and white photos spilled across the table. Dockyards, cargo containers, men in suits shaking hands under floodlights. And in one image, clear as a scar, Adrian Kincaid standing beside a crate marked Seafront Terminal. 2009. Smiling for a camera he never knew was there. Ava's eyes widened. That's him. That's Kincaid. These are proof he orchestrated the fraud, Sloane whispered, snapping quick digital copies with her phone. These could burn him alive in court. But Ethan knew better. Proof meant nothing if the public believed Adrian first. The flash drive. He slid the flash drive into Sloane's laptop. A folder appeared. Harbor and Stone, confidential. Dozens of files. Contracts. Shell accounts. Payments routed through companies Ethan had never even heard of, and buried among them, a memo signed with initials that froze his blood. E.W. Ava leaned over. That's Mom's handwriting. The memo detailed her role as witness and accomplice. She had initialed documents under pressure, then smuggled copies to hide here. She had given Adrian everything he needed to blackmail her, and now she was giving Ethan everything he needed to destroy him. Ethan exhaled, the air heavy in his lungs. She damned herself to save me, and now she's damned him to save you. The paper. Last was a folded sheet. Ethan opened it slowly, afraid it might tear just from the weight of the words. Ethan, if you are reading this, I couldn't outrun Adrian anymore. I know you will hate me for the signatures, for the part one played, but I swear, every line I wrote was meant to buy you time. He will come for Ava. He will call her leverage. You must not let him. The man in your boardroom who looks at you too long. He already belongs to Adrian. Do not trust anyone except the boy who carries your blood. Lila. Ethan's hand shook as he set the page down. Ava whispered. She knew. She knew even back then. Yes, Ethan said quietly. And now so do we. The trap. The vault door creaked open. Pike stepped inside, pale. We got a problem. Two men just walked in upstairs. Not customers. Black suits, no umbrellas. They're asking for Mr. Whitmore by name. Ethan snapped the lid shut, slid the contents back into the box, and locked it. He pocketed the key. Adrian knew we'd come here, Sloane said, furious. Of course he did, Ethan muttered. This isn't just evidence. It's bait. Ava clutched the folio against her chest, her voice trembling but steady. Then what do we do? Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, this 14-year-old girl who was somehow both stranger and blood. We finish what your mother started, he said. The fluorescent lights flickered. Heavy footsteps echoed down the concrete stairs. The vault had just become a trap, and Ethan Whitmore had just decided he wasn't leaving without a fight. The echo of footsteps in the stairwell was too deliberate to be bankers. Pike's voice was a low growl. 2, maybe 3, moving like professionals. They're not here to talk. Sloane's pistol was already in her hand, hidden by the fold of her coat. She looked at Ethan. Options. Only one, Ethan said. He pressed a deposit box drawer back into its slot, locked it, and pocketed the key again. We walk out together. They want Ava, not a firefight in a small-town bank. Ava's eyes widened. You're just going to give me to them? Ethan knelt to her level. His silver hair caught the fluorescent light, and for a second he looked less like a billionaire and more like a soldier who'd fought too long. No, I'm going to make them believe they have us. Then we take the board off the table. Before Ava could ask what he meant, the vault door swung wider. 2 men entered, both in tailored black suits, polished shoes too new for a rainy morning. One carried a briefcase, the other nothing at all. The kind of nothing that was more dangerous than any weapon you could see. Mr. Whitmore, the taller one said, voice casual as if they bumped into each other on Fifth Avenue. Mr. Kincaid requests a word. Ethan straightened slowly. His height forced the man to tilt his chin upward. He's free to call my office. The shorter one smirked. He already has. With a voicemail. The taller man's eyes flicked to Ava. Pretty girl. Strong jaw. She looks like her mother. Ethan's stomach turned to ice. Pike moved first. He shoved Ava behind Ethan and Sloane, hand flashing under his jacket. The shorter man reacted instantly, pulling steel from a shoulder holster. For half a heartbeat, the vault felt like a trigger waiting to be pulled. Then the banker's voice cracked through the tension. Sirs, please. This is a secure facility. The taller man raised a hand, silencing everyone. No noise, no blood. Just the girl. Hand her over, Mr. Whitmore, and we all walk out like gentlemen. Ethan's eyes narrowed. You mistake me for a gentleman. And in one motion, he flipped the steel table between them. The crash reverberated like thunder. Sloane's pistol barked once, shattering a fluorescent bulb overhead. Pike tackled the shorter man into the concrete wall. Ava scrambled back, clutching the folio as if it were armor. The taller man swung the briefcase like a hammer, clipping Ethan's shoulder. Paper scattered, but Ethan barely flinched. He caught the man's wrist, twisted, and drove him back against the lockers. The vault door slammed shut behind them, triggered by the security alarm. They were locked in. The betrayal. Minutes later, sirens wailed above. Police voices echoed in the lobby. But instead of relief, Ethan saw the smug smile spreading on the taller man's face. They won't arrest us, the man said. We're already working for them. Sloane froze, eyes narrowing. What did you just say? The shorter man, bleeding from his nose, laughed. You think Kincaid only bought politicians? He bought cops. He bought your board. He bought your people, Whitmore. Ethan's gut clenched. Lila's letter had warned him. The man in your boardroom who looks at you too long. He already belongs to Adrian. Which one? Who had already sold him out? The taller man leaned close, breath hot. Adrian doesn't need to take your empire, Ethan. He's already inside. He just needs a girl to make you hand it over willingly. Ava's voice shook, but she forced it out. He'll have to kill me first. The man smiled. That's the plan. Ethan's fist broke his nose before the last word finished. Escape. Pike jammed the security panel with the butt of his gun, sparks spitting. We got 2 minutes before local PD swarms this floor. Ethan grabbed Ava's hand. Then we're ghosts in one. Sloane pressed her earpiece. Route C, Pike. Get us to the garage. They moved fast, out the staff corridor, past startled tellers, through the maintenance door into the loading bay. Rain hammered the asphalt. Pike's SUV screeched around the corner, doors open. As they dove inside, Ava glanced back. Through the sheets of rain, she saw one of the suited men staggering into the alley, clutching his bloody face but laughing, eyes burning with something Ethan recognized, certainty. Certainty that this wasn't over. The revelation. Back inside the SUV, Ethan finally let go of Ava's hand. She still clutched the folio like it was life itself. You said Kincaid's already inside, Ava whispered. Inside what? Ethan didn't answer immediately. His gaze was on the rain, but his mind was back in the boardroom, scanning every face that had smiled too politely. My company, he said at last. My empire. And if that's true, his jaw tightened, then the war isn't at the gates anymore. It's at the table. Ava's voice was barely audible over the rain. Then maybe Mom didn't just leave us evidence. Ethan turned to her. What do you mean? She opened the folio again. This time, in the lining, her fingers found something even smaller than the key, a folded slip of paper Lila had sewn into the seam. In neat, tiny handwriting. A name. A date. A board member Ethan trusted most. Ethan's blood ran cold. The betrayal had a face. The Whitmore Holdings boardroom was built like a cathedral. 60 feet of glass walls staring down on Midtown, a table the length of a swimming pool, leather chairs arranged like thrones. It had been designed to intimidate. Today, it felt like a courtroom. Ethan stood at the head of the table, rain dripping from his coat onto the polished oak. Ava sat just behind him, too small for the chair, clutching the leather folio in her lap like a shield. Sloane and Pike flanked the doors. Every director was present. Every director wore the look of a juror, deciding if the accused would swing. Gentlemen, ladies, Ethan began, his voice low but carrying. You've all seen the headlines. You've heard Adrian's poison. So let me be clear. I have a daughter, 14 years old. Her name is Ava. She is mine. And if any of you think that makes me weaker, he leaned forward on the table, eyes like knives, then you've forgotten who built this tower. A ripple of discomfort traveled down the line of suits. One director finally spoke. Lawrence Gray, 63, barrel-chested, a man Ethan had trusted for 2 decades. With respect, Ethan, perception is reality in this market. Kincaid has turned your family situation into a liability. Our stock is already bleeding. Investors are calling for your resignation. Ethan's jaw flexed. Investors don't run this empire. I do. Gray's eyes slid toward Ava. And if your judgment is compromised... That was when Ava stood. Her hands trembled, but her voice cut like glass. He's not compromised. You are. The room went silent. She pulled the slip of paper from the folio and slapped it onto the table. Ethan recognized Lila's handwriting instantly. Gray. 2008, Geneva. Gasps. Whispers. Lawrence Gray's face drained to color. You were in Geneva with Kincaid when the seafront contracts were signed. Ethan said coldly, you vouched for shipments that never existed, and you've been selling my company from the inside ever since. Gray tried to bluster. This is nonsense. Sit down. Ethan barked. The room shook with it. For the first time in years, the directors remembered why they had once followed him without question. Gray sank back into his chair, sweating. The call. In the middle of the silence, Sloane's phone buzzed. She checked the screen, froze, then turned it so Ethan could see. Unknown caller. Live stream. She answered. Adrian Kincaid's face filled the screen, lit by the glow of a dozen monitors behind him. His smile was the kind men practice in mirrors. Well, Ethan, Adrian purred. Congratulations on your little family reunion. Touching, really. But you know what happens when family enters business. Weakness spreads like rot. Get to the point, Ethan said. Adrian leaned closer to the camera. The point is Ava. She's leverage, and leverage belongs to the highest bidder. Right now, the entire world is watching her every move. She leaves that tower. She's mine. Ava's knuckles whitened on the folio. Adrian's smile sharpened. Oh, and do give Gray my regards. He's been such a loyal messenger. The feed cut. The panic. Half the board erupted at once. Some demanded Ethan step down before the company collapsed. Others whispered about police, about custody battles, about kidnapping. None of them mattered. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. Enough. The word cracked like a whip. Adrian wants panic. He wants me alone. He will have neither. He turned to Ava. You don't leave this tower. Not until I take the fight to him. Ava's eyes flashed. I'm not hiding while you bleed for me. You don't have a choice, Ethan snapped. Yes, I do, she shot back. Her voice trembled, but her words didn't. Mom didn't keep me alive this long, so I could sit in a tower like a caged bird. If Kincaid wants me, then maybe I'm the one thing that can beat him. Silence. Ethan's heart clenched. For the first time, he saw Lila's fire in Ava's eyes, the same fire that had once made him follow a woman into battles he hadn't wanted to fight. But Ava wasn't Lila. Ava was his. And now she was bait. The choice. When the boardroom finally cleared. Ethan stood alone at the window, rain streaking down the glass like veins. Sloane approached. She's right, you know. If Adrian wants her, maybe it's time we use that. Ethan turned slowly. His face was stone, but his voice was softer than it had been all day. She's my daughter, not a pawn. Sloane didn't look away. She's both. And if you don't play her right, Adrian will. Ethan closed his eyes. For a long moment, he let himself be just a father, not a CEO. Then he opened them again and the steel returned. Then God help him, Ethan said, if he ever tries. Ava Whitmore had been inside Whitmore Tower for 72 hours straight. By the third day, the glass walls felt like a gilded cage, and every shadow in the lobby looked like a knife waiting for her name. Sloane shadowed her from floor to floor. Pike drilled the security staff until they sweated through their suits, and Ethan stalked the halls like a caged lion. But Adrian Kincaid didn't need shadows to strike. He needed spectacle, and spectacle came at noon. The decoy. They had decided Ava could not hide forever. Her existence was already public. To keep her shuttered away would only prove Adrian's narrative, that Ethan was ashamed, that she was a liability. So Ethan agreed to one outing. controlled, supervised. A walk to the Whitmore Foundation's downtown wing for a quiet visit, scheduled to look casual but choreographed down to the sidewalk tiles. The Bentley rolled slowly through traffic, tinted glass hiding Ava as she sat pressed between Sloan and Pike. Ethan followed in a second car, scanning pedestrians through tinted windows. For 6 blocks, the city behaved. Then the street erupted. A crowd surged from nowhere. Camera crews, microphones, hands clutching signs Ethan hadn't known existed until they were shoved against the car windows. Whitmore lies. Who is the girl? Ava equals fraud. The Bentley braked. Pike swore. This wasn't leaked. This was staged. Sloan shoved Ava's head down. Stay low. But before the driver could reverse, a sanitation truck screeched across the intersection and blocked the lane. Doors flew open. Men in orange coveralls spilled out, not city workers, but mercenaries wearing a uniform of legitimacy. And in their hands, stun batons. The snatch. The back door of the Bentley ripped open. A gloved hand grabbed for Ava's arm. She screamed and kicked, the sound muffled by chaos outside. Pike lunged across her, gun drawn, but the first mercenary's baton cracked against his forearm, sending the pistol skidding under the seat. Sloan fired twice into the air, warning shots, but the mob drowned them in flashes and shouts. The mercenaries didn't flinch. Ethan's second car screeched to a halt. He exploded out the door, raincoat flaring, silver hair gleaming under the sun. He shoved through the mob like a man built of steel. "Ava!" he roared. She twisted free, just enough to see him. Her father, storming through chaos, eyes blazing. For one heartbeat, she thought he could split the city in half. Then a mercenary yanked her from the car. Her scream cut the air in two. The reckoning. Ethan hit the man before the baton cleared its arc. His fist broke the mask's plastic guard, sent the mercenary sprawling. Another lunged. Ethan took the baton to his ribs, but didn't stop moving, his hands closing on Ava's shoulders, ripping her back toward him. "Mine!" he snarled, voice low, feral, heard only by the man who had just lost her. Pike, bleeding but unbowed, recovered his gun and fired into the air again. This time the crowd scattered. The mercenaries melted into the chaos, abandoning their quarry. Ethan shoved Ava into the second car, slammed the door, and climbed in after her. His chest heaved. Her eyes were wide, wet, furious. "You almost lost me," she whispered. "Never," he said, though his ribs screamed and the blood on his shirt proved otherwise. Adrian's play. That evening, every network ran the footage. Ava's terrified face, Ethan's bloody shirt, the chaos in broad daylight. The narrative wrote itself. Billionaire's daughter nearly kidnapped in Midtown, but who was behind it? Adrian Kincaid appeared on CNBC within the hour. His smile was all sympathy. "How tragic," he said. "How dangerous that Mr. Whitmore's personal scandals endanger a child. This is exactly why Whitmore Holdings needs stable leadership. For investors, for families, for New York." The stock dipped 5 points before the segment ended. The line in the sand. Back in the tower, Ava sat cross-legged on Ethan's office couch, clutching the folio against her chest. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "He won't stop. He'll keep coming until he wins. Or until one of us is dead." Ethan stood at the window, rain streaking the glass, skyline glowing like a battlefield. "Then it won't be us." He turned. His eyes met hers. For the first time, there was no distance, no business, no empire, just father and daughter. "You wanted me to say it," he said softly. "So I'll say it again. You are mine, and I will burn this city to keep you breathing." Ava blinked, then nodded, a tear sliding down her cheek. She looked both terrified and unbreakable. And somewhere across Manhattan, Adrian Kincaid smiled into his glass of bourbon, knowing exactly what vow Ethan had just made, because it was a vow that would cost him everything. The indictment. The subpoena arrived in a plain white envelope, delivered by a man who looked too nervous to be carrying such a weapon. Sloan slid it open with the precision of a surgeon, then read it twice. Her face didn't change until the third time. She laid it on Ethan's desk. "They're indicting you." Ethan didn't even glance at the seal of the New York District Court. "On what charge?" fraud, concealment of assets. They're framing Ava's existence as an undisclosed liability to shareholders. Ava, perched on the corner of the desk with her knees tucked under her hoodie, frowned. Wait, I'm a liability? No, Ethan said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were fire. You're leverage. They're trying to turn you into paperwork. Pike muttered from the corner, cleaning his pistol. Paperworks kill more men than bullets. Adrian's broadcast. That night, Adrian Kincaid appeared on every news channel, framed by the glow of Midtown. My heart breaks for young Ava Whitmore, he told the anchors, eyes moist with crocodile tears. No child should suffer because of the secrets her father chose to bury. But let's be honest. Whitmore Holdings deserves transparency. Investors deserve truth. And the truth is, Ethan Whitmore lied to all of us. Clips rolled. Ethan pulling Ava from the Bentley. Ethan bloodied in the street. Ava's frightened eyes caught in camera flashes. Adrian leaned back in his chair, smiling faintly. And when a man lies to protect his throne, he said, sometimes the throne must be taken away for the good of everyone. Ava's rebellion. In the tower, Ava threw the remote at the couch. He's making me a victim. Over and over. He's winning because the world only sees me scared. Ethan stepped forward, steady, because you were scared. That isn't shame. Ava stood, fist tight, then let them see me angry. Sloane crossed her arms. What exactly are you suggesting? Ava turned to Ethan. Let me speak. Publicly. A live interview. If Adrian thinks he can use me against you, then let me show him he can't. The room went silent. Ethan shook his head. No, you're not bait. Not again. I already am. Ava shot back. The difference is, right now he controls the story. But if I go on record, if I tell the world who I am before he twists it, he loses that control. Sloane's lips curved despite herself. She's not wrong. Ethan's jaw tightened. He stared at his daughter, the fire in her eyes, the unyielding line of her jaw, and saw Lila again, but stronger. This isn't a game, he said finally. Ava's voice was steady. Neither is survival. The trap inside. The next morning, Ava sat before cameras in the Whitmore Tower atrium. Reporters buzzed like hornets. Sloane had vetted every outlet. Pike had sealed every door, and Ethan stood just off-frame like a shadow in a tailored suit. Ava's voice shook at first. Then it steadied. My name is Ava Whitmore, she said. Yes, Ethan Whitmore is my father. No, I didn't grow up knowing him. My mother, Lila Hart, kept me safe the only way she knew how, by keeping me away from this world. She paused, swallowed. But I'm here now, and I'm not afraid to be his daughter. I'm proud of it. The cameras clicked like applause. But in the corner of the press pit, Sloane's trained eyes caught something wrong. A man too still, too calm, hand dipping into his jacket. Down, she barked. The atrium exploded. The attempt. The would-be assassin's pistol cleared leather. But Pike's bullet hit first, shattering the man's wrist. Screams ripped through the atrium. Ava ducked behind the podium, clutching the folio as if it were armor. Reporters scattered. Security surged. The assassin dropped, writhing, cursing Adrian's name. And through the chaos, Ethan's hand gripped Ava's shoulder, pulling her close. Now, you see, he hissed, why I said no. But Ava's face, pale and defiant, turned up to his. And now you see why I can't hide. Adrian smiled. Hours later, on a hidden feed, Adrian Kincaid watched the footage on loop. The girls fire. The crowd's panic. Ethan's bloodied suit. And Adrian smiled. Because every move Whitmore made, every desperate defense, was still inside the box Adrian had built. Dance, Ethan, Adrian murmured to the screen. Dance until you break. The fallout. The attempted shooting at the tower atrium dominated every network. Clips of Ava ducking behind the podium played on a loop, framed by headlines that dripped poison. Whitmore child under fire. Is the empire crumbling? Ava Whitmore. Symbol or liability? Ethan turned the television off before the third cheering. He had spent the last 3 nights awake, blood humming with fury. Now the fury had teeth. Kincaid's getting bolder, Sloane said, pacing. He doesn't care if it's sloppy. He just wants the world to watch. Pike checked the reinforced locks for the 5th time that hour. Or maybe sloppy isn't sloppy. Maybe it's a show that's the real weapon. Ethan's eyes shifted to Ava. She sat curled in an armchair, hoodie drawn tight, clutching the folio. Her eyes were steady despite the bruise on her cheek from diving behind the podium. "He wants to scare her," Ethan said. "But he's forgotten. Fear makes Whitmore's dangerous." The invitation. The next morning, a sealed envelope arrived at Whitmore Tower. Hand-delivered. Addressed to Ethan in Adrian's handwriting. Inside, a single invitation card. Whitmore Club. Midnight. Come alone. Bring the girl. Or everyone will see what betrayal looks like. Pike cursed. "It's a trap." "Of course it's a trap," Ethan said, sliding the card back into an envelope. "But it's one we can't ignore." Sloane's jaw tightened. "You're not actually considering taking her there." "I don't have to consider," Ethan said flatly. "He's already chosen the battlefield." Ava rose from her chair. "Then let's fight on it." Her voice was steady. Her hands weren't. Midnight at the club. The Whitmore Club was a palace of glass and velvet, the kind of place where men wrote history on cocktail napkins. At midnight, it was nearly empty. Only a few scattered figures lingered in shadows. Ethan entered with Ava at his side. Pike and Sloane ghosted behind despite Ethan's order to come alone. Adrian Kincaid sat at the bar, pouring bourbon with the casual arrogance of a king in exile. His smile widened as Ethan approached. "Family reunion," Adrian drawled. "How touching. Lila would be proud." Ethan's teeth clenched. "Say her name again, and I end you before the cameras do." Adrian only chuckled. He turned to Ava, glass raised. "And you must be the miracle child. So much like your mother. I wonder if you'll die like her too." Ava's heart thudded, but she didn't flinch. "You'll never touch me." Adrian leaned back, smirking. "Who says I need to?" He snapped his fingers. The betrayal. From the shadows, a familiar figure emerged. Lawrence Gray. Ava gasped. Sloane swore under her breath. Ethan's chest hollowed. Gray, once his oldest ally, once the man who toasted his victories, now stood shoulder to shoulder with Adrian, a pistol in his hand. "You trusted me too long," Gray said, his voice hollow. "And Adrian promised me survival. You sold your soul for survival?" Ethan's voice was low thunder. "Then die with it." The next moments blurred. Pike fired first. Gray's shot went wide, glass shattering behind Ethan. Adrian ducked, laughing even as bullets chewed the bar. Sloane shoved Ava to the ground, shielding her body with her own. Then Gray lunged. His pistol swung down toward Ava. The near death. Time slowed. Ethan's heart stopped, but Ava didn't freeze. She rolled from under Sloane, clutching the heavy folio like a weapon, and smashed into Gray's wrist. The gun clattered to the floor. Gray cursed, stumbled, and Pike's second bullet dropped him to the marble tiles. The silence afterward was louder than the gunfire. Adrian rose from behind the bar, clapping slowly. His smile was shark-white. "Well done, Ethan. She's not just leverage. She's lethal." He slipped through a side door before Pike could reload. Gone into the night, leaving blood and betrayal behind. The cost. Back at the tower, Ava's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She sat on the couch, staring at the folio she had used to save her own life. "I almost died tonight," she whispered. Ethan crouched in front of her, his hand steady on hers. "You lived, because you fought." Her eyes lifted to his, wet and fierce. "If this is my life now, then I want more than survival. I want him to pay." Ethan's chest ached. Lila's fire burned in her again, hotter now, more dangerous. He nodded slowly. "Then we'll burn him together." And outside, in a penthouse across the city, Adrian Kincaid raised a glass of bourbon to the skyline, whispering to the night, "Then let the war begin." The summons. The papers arrived at dawn. Thick, embossed, brutal. Petition for custody. Filed by Adrian Kincaid's lawyers, claiming Ethan Whitmore was unfit to provide a stable home for a minor child, citing exposure to violence, corporate scandal, and active criminal investigations. Ava's name appeared a dozen times. Each one felt like a bullet. Ethan stood at the kitchen island of his penthouse, fists planted on marble, staring at the words. He's not just trying to ruin me. He's trying to take you. Ava sat at the stool across from him, hoodie sleeves pulled over her fists. Her voice was small, but sharp. Can he do that? He's not my father. Sloane's voice cut in from the doorway. He doesn't have to be. He just has to convince a judge you're safer with anyone else but Ethan Whitmore. And with the footage of the shooting, the kidnapping attempt, he's got ammunition. Ethan crumpled a petition in his hand. Then we'll fight him where he thinks he's strongest. The courtroom, the family court chamber, was packed. Reporters swarmed the steps outside, whispering about billion-dollar legacies and a girl who could topple Whitmore Holdings. Inside, Ava sat at the defendant's table beside Ethan. She wore a navy dress Sloane had picked, but her sneakers peeked from under the hem. A rebellion only she understood. Across the aisle sat Adrian Kincaid, flanked by a phalanx of attorneys. His smile was modest, his suit flawless, his eyes gleaming with quiet triumph. The judge entered. The room hushed. Kincaid versus Whitmore. The clerk called. Ava's stomach dropped. To hear her name in a case she never chose. It was like being erased. Adrian's lead attorney rose. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Mr. Whitmore has placed his child in repeated danger. Attempted kidnappings. Gunfire. The world has seen the footage. For her safety, custody should be transferred immediately. Ethan stood, interrupting. Objection. I will not stand here while that man, he stabbed a finger toward Adrian, uses his court to abduct my daughter. Gasps rippled. The judge banged her gavel. Control your temper, Mr. Whitmore. But Adrian only smiled, leaning back in his chair as if he'd already won. Ava on the stand. The moment Ava was sworn in, camera zoomed, pen scratched. She sat on the witness stand, hands trembling in her lap. The attorney's voice was silk. Ava, do you feel safe living with Mr. Whitmore? Ava glanced at Ethan. His eyes were steady, but his jaw was tight. She swallowed. Yes, safer than anywhere else. The attorney paced. Safer than when you were nearly kidnapped in broad daylight? Her throat closed. She forced the words out. That wasn't his fault. And safer than when an armed man fired at you inside Whitmore Tower? Her voice cracked. He protected me. The attorney smiled faintly. But you were still there. You were still in danger. Isn't it true that being with Ethan Whitmore puts a target on your back? Ava's nails dug into her palms. She wanted to scream. Instead, she whispered, the target's on me no matter where I go. At least with him, I can fight back. The room buzzed. Adrian's smile faltered. The turn. At recess. Ethan found Ava outside the courtroom, curled on the steps. He crouched beside her, his hand warm on her shoulder. You did well, he said quietly. Her eyes brimmed. I hate this. I hate being a headline. I hate being their weapon. He pulled her into a brief, fierce hug. Then we'll take the weapon away. Sloane approached, her tablet glowing. We may have found a way. Lila's documents from Rhinebeck. There's a clause in the seafront contracts. If we can prove Adrian forged them, the custody petition collapses. He can't claim to protect Ava if he's the one endangering her with fraud. Ethan stood, his eyes narrowing like a storm tightening. Then tomorrow, we bury him with his own lies. Adrian's whisper. That night, as Ethan and Ava returned to the tower under heavy guard, Adrian's voice reached them through a live broadcast. He stood at a podium, lights flashing, the city his stage. Ethan Whitmore can try to keep what's his, Adrian said, but the law belongs to me, and when the law takes his daughter, the empire falls with her. Ava clenched her fists, staring at the screen. For the first time, she didn't just fear him, she hated him. Dad, she said softly. Ethan turned. When we beat him. Her voice shook with fury. I won't be the one who tells the world. And Ethan knew then, Adrian hadn't created a victim. He'd created a weapon. The courtroom clash. The family court chamber was standing room only. Journalists pressed against the back wall. cameras smuggled in undercoats. The tension was a living thing. Adrian Kincaid sat poised in his Navy suit, cufflinks gleaming, attorneys flanking him like soldiers. His smile was calm, as though victory had already been notarized. Across the aisle, Ethan stood tall in charcoal gray. Ava beside him, small but unflinching. Her navy dress hung loose on her frame, sneakers peeking from under the hem. Pike and Sloan stood at the rear like silent sentinels. The judge raised her gavel. This hearing will continue. Mr. Whitmore, you may present your evidence. Ethan stepped forward. His voice was cold steel. My late partner, Lila Hart, kept records of Adrian Kincaid's dealings at Seafront Terminal. Contracts forged, payments hidden, fraud that endangered thousands of jobs. These documents prove not only his corruption, but that his influence directly endangered Ava. He laid the Rhinebeck folder on the bench. A murmur swept the room. The judge frowned, scanning the first page. These signatures, this is Kincaid's? Yes, Ethan said. And these? He tapped the margin where Lila had written EW, were Lila's. She risked her life to preserve this, so her daughter would have truth, not just shadows. For the first time, Adrian's smile cracked. Adrian's counter. The judge looked up. Mr. Kincaid, how do you respond to these allegations? Adrian rose slowly, straightening his cufflinks. Your Honor, what Mr. Whitmore calls evidence is nothing more than desperation. These papers are forgeries, concocted by a dying woman and a desperate man trying to cling to his empire. Gasps. And as for Ava Whitmore, he turned to the gallery, voice dripping with false pity. Is this the stable environment a child deserves? Shootings, kidnappings, stage theatrics, and boardrooms. She deserves safety, not to be used as a shield for her father's pride. Ava's fists clenched in her lap. Ethan's voice thundered. She is not a shield. She is my daughter. The gavel slammed. Order! The ambush. When recess was called, chaos exploded outside the courthouse. Reporters swarmed. Microphones shoved into faces. Shouts of, "Do you admit it, Whitmore? Is Ava really safe with you?" Ethan gripped Ava's shoulder, shielding her as Pike cleared a path. The Bentley waited at the curb, but before they reached it, the crowd shifted. Too fast. Too precise. A black SUV screeched against the curb. Doors flew open. Masked men in dark jackets surged out, shoving cameras aside. Get her, one barked. Hands lunged. Ava screamed as one gripped her arm. Pike fired into the air, scattering the mob. Sloan tackled the second assailant. Ethan tore Ava free, slamming her against the car door, shielding her with his body. Reporters screamed, flashes popping like gunfire. The world watched live as a billionaire fought for his daughter in the street. The SUV peeled away empty, but the damage was done. Every network replayed the footage within the hour. Ava Whitmore dragged into attack. Is she safe with her father? Adrian appeared on CNN that night, smile serene. This tragedy only proves my point. Ethan Whitmore cannot protect her, but I can. The breaking point. Back in the tower, Ava sat on the couch, knees pulled to her chest, eyes wet but blazing. I can't live like this, she whispered. Running, hiding, being dragged across headlines. I want to fight. Ethan knelt in front of her. His suit was torn, his knuckles raw. We are fighting. Not like this. She held his gaze, fierce despite her tears. If we only play defense, he wins. Mom didn't keep those records just for you. She kept them for me. Maybe I'm the one who's supposed to end him. Ethan's throat tightened. He saw Lila again in those eyes, stubborn, unyielding, fearless. No, he said, voice breaking. You're supposed to live. Ava leaned forward, pressing the steel key into his palm again. Then use it. End him before he ends us. Ethan closed his hand over hers. For the first time in decades, his empire felt small compared to the girl staring back at him. And in the shadows of his penthouse, the war he thought he could contain had just reached its breaking point. The leak. It began with a video. Grainy security footage. Time-stamped 3 years earlier. A small corner store in Queens. Shelves half empty. A teenage girl, hood pulled low, slipping a candy bar into her backpack, the shopkeeper shouting, police lights flashing outside, the headline above the footage, Ava Whitmore, delinquent daughter? By morning, it was everywhere. Networks replayed the video on loop. Talk shows debated. Was she a troubled teen? A liar? A fraud like her father? Adrian Kincaid appeared on Good Morning America, shaking his head with performative sorrow. No child is perfect, he said, but this is exactly my point. Ava Whitmore deserves stability, discipline, safety. Her father has failed to provide it, and if he can't keep her from petty crime, how can he protect her from greater dangers? The smear campaign was complete. The collapse. In Whitmore Tower, Ava sat curled on the couch, knees tucked to her chest, eyes red from hours of footage replaying her worst mistake. I was hungry, she whispered. Mom was sick, and I hadn't eaten all day. It was one candy bar. They make me look like a criminal. Ethan sat beside her. He wanted to hold her, shield her, erase the world outside the glass walls. Instead, he clenched his fists. This is Adrian's hand. He's dragging you through the dirt to break me. Ava looked up, tears streaking her face. Then maybe you shouldn't fight for me. The words gutted him. What are you saying? Her voice cracked. Maybe I should just go with him. Maybe if I give him what he wants, he'll stop hurting you. Ethan's hand caught her shoulder, firm, trembling. Listen to me. You are not his. You are mine. And no matter what the world says, you are not a mistake to be erased. You are my daughter. Her tears spilled. Then why does it feel like I'm ruining your life? He pulled her into his arms at last, holding her as tightly as he'd held his empire, as though both might shatter if he loosened his grip. The boardroom knife. That afternoon, the board convened. Cameras lined the street outside. Investors demanded Ethan's resignation. Lawrence Gray's replacement, a smug financier named Cole Vance, stood. Ethan, the girl is destroying the company. Your refusal to step down has cost us billions in market value. If you love her, as you claim, you'll resign and remove her from this circus. Ethan's voice was ice. If you think my daughter is negotiable, you've forgotten who I am. Vance smirked. We haven't forgotten. We've outgrown you. Whispers surged. The boardroom had turned into a tribunal. Sloan leaned close, murmuring in Ethan's ear, if they force a vote, you'll lose. Ethan's jaw flexed. He scanned the room, then said aloud, if you want me gone, then vote. But know this, if I leave, Whitmore Holdings burns with me. The room fell silent. Even the men loyal to Adrian knew the truth. Without Ethan, there was no empire. Adrian's final blow. That night, Adrian staged his masterpiece. He called a press conference at the seafront terminal, cameras painting the night in harsh white. He stood before a container crane, holding a copy of the leaked security footage on a giant screen behind him. Ava's face froze mid-scream as police hands grabbed her. This, Adrian declared, is the girl Ethan Whitmore would risk your jobs, your pensions, your future protect. A thief, a liar, a liability. This is who he places above all of you. Reporters roared. Flashes blinded. And in Whitmore Tower, Ava watched it live, her face pale. Her voice shook. He's right. To them, I'll always be the thief. Ethan knelt in front of her, fire blazing in his eyes. Then, tomorrow, we show them the truth. We show them Adrian Kincaid for what he is. The impossible choice. Sloan entered, tablet glowing. We've got one shot. Lila's evidence isn't just about fraud. It's about the accident that killed her. The files name Adrian outright. But if we release them, Ava's connection to that world will be permanent. Her life will never be private again. Ethan looked at his daughter. She looked back, eyes tired but fierce. Dad, she whispered, don't choose for me. Choose with me. For the first time, Ethan realized the truth. This wasn't his fight alone. It never had been. And in that moment, the father and the daughter decided together. Tomorrow, they would end Adrian Kincaid. The stage. The press conference was Ethan's idea, but Ava's decision. Not in a boardroom. Not in a courtroom. At the seafront terminal itself. The place where everything began and where Lila's secrets had been buried. Floodlights blazed against the night. Cranes loomed like iron skeletons. Reporters filled the pier, cameras hungry. The world was watching. Ethan stood at the podium in a navy suit, silver hair catching the light. Beside him stood Ava, small but fierce, dressed simply in jeans and a dark blazer, the leather folio clutched tight against her chest. Sloane whispered in Ethan's ear. Security's stretched thin. If Adrian makes a move, it's here. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then let him. The truth. Ethan's voice carried like thunder. For weeks, Adrian Kincaid has painted my daughter as a weapon, a liability. A lie. Tonight, you will hear the truth. He held up Lila's letter, the one he had carried close to his heart since the funeral. This was written by Lila Hart, the woman I loved, the woman who gave me the daughter I didn't know I had. In it, she warns of Kincaid's fraud, his corruption, his threats. She risked her life to preserve the evidence. He laid out the Rhinebeck documents on the podium. Contracts, photos, signatures. The cameras zoomed in. This isn't just about me. This is about every worker Kincaid cheated, every pension he stole, every life he endangered. This is who he is. The crowd erupted. Reporters shouted. Ava stepped forward, clutching the folio. Her voice trembled, but grew stronger with each word. My name is Ava Whitmore. Yes, I once stole a candy bar when I was hungry and scared. Adrian Kincaid wants you to believe that mistake defines me, but it doesn't. What defines me is standing here tonight, refusing to let him destroy my father or the truth. She raised the folio. This is my mother's legacy, and I will not let him bury it. The pier roared with flashes, shouts, chaos. Adrian's last gambit. From the edge of the crowd, Adrian appeared. No cameras caught his arrival. Suddenly he was just there, stepping onto the platform in a charcoal suit, flanked by men in black coats. His smile was razor-thin. Touching, he said, voice carrying even without a microphone. But you've made one mistake, Ethan. The court of public opinion isn't swayed by papers. It's swayed by power. He snapped his fingers. One of his men surged forward, gun glinting under the floodlights, charging the stage. Ava froze. Reporters screamed. But Ethan didn't. He moved faster than instinct, shoving Ava behind him as the first shot cracked through the night. The bullet tore through Ethan's shoulder. He staggered, blood blooming across his suit. Pike tackled the gunman. Sloane fired back. The pier exploded into pandemonium. Ethan sank to one knee, clutching his shoulder, vision tunneling. Ava crouched beside him, sobbing. Dad. His hand gripped hers, iron despite the blood. Finish it. End him. Ava stand. Ava rose. Her sneakers squeaked on wet wood as she stepped to the microphone. The cameras turned, the world watching. You all saw it, she shouted, voice breaking but strong. You saw Adrian's men try to kill my father. Right here, in front of you. He says he protects children, but he came here to kill one. She held up the folio with both hands. This is the truth my mother died for. This is the truth my father bleeds for. And this is the truth that will bury Adrian Kincaid. For a moment, silence. Then the crowd erupted, not in fear this time, but fury. Shouts rose, arrest him. Liar. Fraud. Police surged. Adrian's men scattered. And for the first time, Adrian Kincaid's smile cracked into something desperate. Aftermath. Hours later, in a sterile hospital room, Ethan Whitmore lay bandaged but alive. Rain tapped the windows. Ava sat at his bedside, clutching his hand. We won, she whispered. He smiled faintly. No, you did. Her eyes filled. I almost lost you. You never will, he said softly. Because now I've found you. For the first time, Ava allowed herself to rest her head on his chest, listening to the beat of a heart that had once been closed to everyone. The empire could be rebuilt. The wounds could heal. But the bond forged in blood and truth, that would never break. Epilogue. Weeks later, headlines blazed. Kincaid indicted on fraud, conspiracy, attempted murder. Whitmore Holdings stabilizes under father-daughter leadership. At the tower's top floor, Ethan stood beside Ava as she gazed out at the skyline. It's ours now, she said softly. No, he corrected gently. It's yours. And for the first time, the billionaire who once believed he owned everything realized the only thing worth keeping was a daughter he almost never knew.